It is officially NFL Draft Week, and it is my second favorite time of the year behind the actual NFL season happening. Can't wait for this week. So you know what we have to do leading up to the draft week? We got to post the updated top 20 Dynasty rookie rankings in this 2024 rookie class, just so the NFL Draft can take a wrecking ball to these rankings here in just a couple of days here. So at number 1 and 2, they've been here all year. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. and it's Caleb Williams. Those two, they've been here all year long because they are the best ones. Now, this is a super flex format. I still prefer Marvin over Caleb, and there's one simple reason for it. I think he's the safer guy. I think there's a higher chance he'll succeed than there will be with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams getting drafted to the Bears is gonna be better than like most years would be because they've got pieces around him now. They've got DJ Moore, they've got Keenan Allen, they've got Cole Kmet. You know, they've got plenty of pieces and they're building a strong defense as well. So I think that the foundation is there for Caleb Williams to be successful in the NFL. I just prefer Marvin because I don't care where he goes. I think he could go to New York Giants and he'll still be effective for them. I don't prefer he does. I don't wish that on him. But I'm just saying, I think that he's pretty much bust-proof. And I think that his ceiling is just as high as Caleb Williams is. Malik Neighbors at number 3 and Rome Odunze at number 4. Now, these guys, literally, they belong in the same tier for very good reason. They can be interchanged on draft night. Like, within a span of 10 minutes, they could be interchangeable. If Rome Odunze goes to the Giants, like a lot of people think he might, and Malik Neighbors go to the Chargers, like a lot of people think he might, there's a clear difference between the two and who you'd prefer. You'd prefer Malik Neighbors over Rome Odunze. But the level of prospect that they both are is basically the same to me. I think Rome Odunze has just as good of a shot, just based on who he is as a player, to succeed in the NFL as Malik Neighbors does. So what if Rome Odunze goes to the Chargers and Malik goes to the Giants? I think that Malik Neighbors is clearly the worse option than Rome Odunze. So it is 100% dependent on where they land on draft night. That is going to impact these particular guys right here, their rankings and where they're going to fall in Dynasty rookie drafts. Number 5 is Brock Bowers, and number 6 is Drake May. So Brock Bowers in a tight end premium, I'm totally fine picking him in the top 3. But in a superflex league, like, yes, he's my number 5 player, but I personally wouldn't pick him this high. Like, I think I've discussed this before on my main channel, Football Fanalysts Network, and I've discussed a little bit here on this channel as well. I don't like taking a tight end inside the top 5. I think it's too early. There's too many things. Tight end position is so dependent on the landing spot. There's so many things that could happen. Kyle Pitts, I picked him at the 103 several years back. He was the best tight end prospect we had seen in years. And he's done nothing to live up to the draft capital that you had to pay for him in Dynasty rookie drafts. So with Kyle Pitts, that's kind of the blueprint there that I'm looking at with Brock Bowers, because it's like, if he goes to a bad landing spot like New England, for example, I haven't heard that buzz, I'm just giving an example. What is the upside for him for the next several years until they get a quarterback? So Brock Bowers, it's completely dependent on where he lands in this draft. I think just based on positional value, he belongs inside the top 5 though. And then Drake May, I think that he's my clear quarterback too. I can understand the conflict in this one between like him and Jayden Daniels, for example. I still prefer Drake May though, even though he had a worse season in 2023. He's still got all the tools that you want. You got the big guy, he's a big arm, and he's plenty mobile. He can extend plays out of the pocket. He can layer deep balls. He can layer throws over the middle. Drake May has all the physical tools that you want, and it looks like he's going inside the top 3 of the NFL draft. So if he goes to Washington, for example, I actually think it's a good landing spot for him because they've got new ownership. They've got a new coaching staff. Everything got scrapped in Washington of old. So he's coming into a completely new situation with a fresh set of eyes and a fresh coaching staff there to help him succeed. So I think Drake May is going to be fine. Jayden Daniels at number 7 and Brian Thomas at number 8. Jayden Daniels is just simply if he hits, he's the most impactful fantasy football quarterback of the bunch, maybe outside of Caleb Williams if they both hit. Like, Jaden Daniels brings the rushing upside to the table. We all understand that. With Jaden Daniels, I've heard Las Vegas is interested in him. I've heard maybe Minnesota's interested in him. Jaden Daniels, I could see him going a lot of places. He'll be an interesting one to watch because I think that his landing spot, unless he goes to like the Patriots, I don't see him really dropping. Like, if he goes to the Raiders, like, I don't think that that's such a negative thing that'll drop him in my rankings. If he goes to the Vikings, I think that's a positive. We'll probably move up past Drake May. I think Jaden Daniels is ultimately just going to be effective if he hits, and it's not really going to be related to team fit unless the team fit is super great or super horrific. And then Brian Thomas Jr., he's the number 4 wide receiver here. I don't love picking him where he's going in drafts right now because I just don't believe in him as quite as much as I do with the top 3 wide receivers. But yeah, he's the wide receiver 4 for sure. The dude is probably the best physical talent out of the wide receiver class. If we're just going off of physical gifts, he'll be a first round pick for sure. But again, it's really dependent, man. Like, Brian Thomas Jr. is not the prospect level that Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze is. This guy's got weaknesses in his game. He's not going to be an over-the-middle guy who's creating separation based off elite footwork. That's not who Brian Thomas is. If he goes and he falls to a team like Buffalo or a team like Kansas City, yes, I like the upside with Brian Thomas. But if he goes to a middle-tier team, someone like the Denver Broncos, I don't love that as much because it's just, there's not a quarterback there who's going to help him be elite. So Brian Thomas Jr., I like him, but I don't love him as a prospect. And then with J.J. McCarthy at number 9 and Troy Franklin at number 10, J.J. McCarthy, like I said this in my Dynasty rookie draft guide I'm working on, he was not a guy that I watched in college thinking that he had real NFL upside. So maybe I'm stupid for not thinking that. It came as a shock to me that he's going as high as he is in mock drafts, and it looks like he's going to be going early in the first round at this point. Maybe he has that it factor that I just didn't see because I didn't study him enough. But now that I watch him with the prospect's eye, he's got a lot of good traits. Like, the guy layers throws over the middle of the field. He's very accurate, even on the run. This guy has a lot of good things on his side. So if he goes to Minnesota, if he goes to Washington, if he goes to New England, there's a lot of good things that can happen here with J.J. McCarthy. I've heard even the Broncos are even thinking about trading up to get a guy like J.J. McCarthy. So there's a lot of good teams that are well structured, have a good coach, that are looking for a quarterback. J.J. McCarthy might find himself in the right situation. And if that happens, I could easily see him shooting up over Brian Thomas at 8. And then with Troy Franklin at 10, I think that he's the wide receiver 5, but I don't think that he is, like, again, the gap between the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 5 is large at the wide receiver position. Like, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, they're in their own tier because they're still elite prospects. They're just not on the level of Marvin Harrison. Whereas with Brian Thomas Jr. and Troy Franklin, they're good prospects, but they're not Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors level. Like, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze could go in their own class outside of 2024. They would be their own class as wide receiver 1. With Brian Thomas Jr., with Troy Franklin, I don't see that. I don't feel that way. But Troy Franklin still does provide a lot of upside if he goes to the right place in Dynasty. And then Michael Pennix at 11 and Trey Benson at 12. So with Michael Pennix, the buzz is that he's going to go first round as well. Like, he's looking like he's going to be a first round pick. And he came out and surprised people with a pretty good 40 time at his pro day. With Michael Pennix, there's still limitations here that kind of make me reluctant to take him in a Dynasty rookie draft. I think that he's more limited as a thrower than people may think. I think the reason that Washington was very good at the deep ball is because, yes, Michael Pennix can throw a good deep ball and he has the receivers for it. But I also think it's because he doesn't really throw that well over the middle of the field. So he's also not very big, so that might be a reason that there's some shortcomings there. Reminds me a lot of Tua. I could see some big games for him if he goes to the right place, but I think ultimately his ceiling is probably capped just because he's not a great athlete and he doesn't have the physical gifts as a guy like Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and even J.J. McCarthy does. And then Trey Benson at number 12, the first running back off the board. Look, I think that if Jonathan Brooks had finished out the season, didn't get his ACL tear, and we saw him run a 4.4 at the NFL Combine, he'd probably still be my running back 1, but that wasn't the case. Trey Benson, yes, he wasn't quite as productive as Jonathan Brooks was, but what he did was he came in 6 foot, 216 pounds, and ran a sub 4.4 40 time. That is the numbers that we're looking for at the running back position when it comes to projecting fantasy success. He hits those numbers. I think he's the first running back off the board in the actual NFL draft. And I think if he goes early day 2, he'll probably shoot above Troy Franklin, Michael Pennix, and go to that top 10 area. Xavier Legette at 13 and Jonathan Brooks at 14. So Xavier Legette is just someone I believe in. Like, if you look at his price on Sleeper, I'm way overdrafting Xavier Legette. I think he's just that good. I think that Xavier Legette, yes, he's a super senior breakout, which I usually don't like at all. But the way he did it was so unlike so many guys that you see breaking out as super seniors. This guy went from like 200 yards receiving to over 1,200. This guy was dominant in games. He took over with Spencer Rattler at quarterback, which I don't think is that good. So Xavier Legette, I think his boom potential in fantasy is massive. But I also do think that Xavier Legette, with the physical tools that he has a higher likelihood of succeeding in fantasy as opposed to a guy like Ladd McConkey, who we'll talk about towards the end of this list. And then Jonathan Brooks at 14. Like I said, if he had finished out the season, if he didn't get injured, like, he'd be above Trey Benson. What we had to hang our hat on with Jonathan Brooks is the guy was effective in his only year starting, because obviously Bijan Robinson took over the limelight when he was in college. So Jonathan Brooks is not the level of prospect that Bijan Robinson was, but he was very effective for Texas in the games that he did play for them. And I do think that the physical skills are there, and he's got the age factor on his side as well. Bo Nix at 15 and Keon Coleman at 16. Bo Nix, again, this is a super flex league, so we've got 6 quarterbacks in here. I think Bo Nix is good. I think that there's an argument to be made that he is the best at improvising on a play out of this quarterback class aside from Caleb Williams. I think his improvisation skills are great. That's a great quality in a quarterback. I think he's very accurate. He's got enough arm strength to make it happen. But I don't see him as a guy who's going to come in and make everyone around him better. I think he'll need elite weapons around him to really maximize what he can be. So that always makes me a little bit hesitant with a quarterback. And then Keon Coleman at 16, he's floated around my rankings for a long time. I'm good with him at the wide receiver 7. I think he's got physical talent. I don't care about the 40 time. 4.6 40 time means nothing. It means nothing to fantasy football success. This guy is young. He's 20 years old, and he's also coming in at a good size, wide receiver size, and he looks like he's going to be a early day 2 pick, if not sneaking inside day 1. Jalen Wright at 17 and Xavier Worthy at 18. So Jalen Wright, out of the University of Tennessee, was productive in his final year, under 200 carries, very efficient guy, and he's got the size and the speed we're looking for again. He's over 210 pounds, and he ran a sub-4 440 time. This guy was also playing in the best conference in college football, and also the most pro. It mocks and mimics the pro level better than any conference, obviously, in college football. The SEC playing in there is obviously a bump up to me personally. So Jalen Wright at the running back position, coming in at a decent age, and also coming in with a pretty decent production profile, especially in 2023. Xavier Worthy at 18 and Ladd McConkey at 19. It's so funny. Early on in the offseason, I thought Xavier Worthy was going to be a good value. He's so overvalued to me right now, it's ridiculous. I would not take him in a Dynasty rookie draft. I think he's better than Adonai Mitchell. I would take him over Adonai Mitchell, but I'm not taking either of these guys because they're both basically first-round picks in Dynasty rookie drafts on Sleeper. Xavier Worthy, the speed doesn't really... Speed, there's no correlation with wide receivers. There's just not. In fact, a lot of speed, a lot of these like super speedy guys like Xavier Worthy, they actually don't work as frequently as guys who are running 4.4s, 4.5s. So Xavier Worthy, to me, the speed actually kind of scares me off a little bit. He'll probably be an early day 2 pick, if not a day 1 pick. The size can't be ignored, though. Tank Dell opened up the door for these wide receivers who are really small, but it's still on the riskier side. So Xavier Worthy, there's just too many concerns here for me to have him ranked any higher than this. And then Ladd McConkey at 19, like, I think he's a better... I think there's an argument to be made that he's better than guys like Keon Coleman, but he doesn't have as many, like, he doesn't have as much upside. There's not as much upside there with Vlad McConkey, who never had a 1,000-yard receiving season. Not exactly competing against other great wide receiver talent in Georgia. Vlad McConkey, there's just something missing. Like, he has more physical gifts than a guy like Hunter Renfrow, but the production profile is very similar to what we got from Hunter Renfrow. So I think he's good. I think he could be very good in a PPR format. But as far as getting you like 20, 25, 30-point games, I don't think Vlad McConkey's that guy. Rounding it out at 20 is Ricky Pearsall out of the University of Florida. Yeah, I've got him above Adonai Mitchell. I think Ricky Pearsall is just a better player. Ricky Pearsall, I don't like that he's coming out pretty late. He's 23 years old. Don't love that. Was a later breakout. But Ricky Pearsall just makes more plays more consistently on a much more diverse route tree than a guy like Adonai Mitchell does. I think that Ricky Pearsall has a better chance of succeeding at the NFL. While I think that Adonai Mitchell's more talented, I think Ricky Pearsall displayed in Florida that this guy can run any route in the route tree. He's also got the size you need. So I think Ricky Pearsall probably goes day 2, maybe in the later round. But I think Ricky Pearsall's NFL career has a better projection for me than a guy like Adonai Mitchell. And let me know what you think of these rankings in the comments below and who you think is going where at the NFL draft in just a couple days.